The first 2 weeks of the season are in the books for the Denver Broncos, and just like that, we have arrived at the first divisional matchup of the 2025 season, and it's the Los Angeles Chargers. The first place Los Angeles Chargers, I might add, a vastly improved team here under Jim Harbaugh, really right out of the gate. And you hear through the years talking to coaches and players and personnel people that have told me that you see coaching really shine in year number 2 of an operation. I think that was true a year ago under Sean Payton in year number 2, and you're already starting to see some of the hallmark signs of that being the case in year number 2 against under Jim Harbaugh. Now, I want to talk about certain dynamics at play. All right, I want to talk about 3 dynamics today. 1 coaching dynamic and 2 dynamics when it comes to the Chargers offense matching up against this Denver Broncos defense. All right, we talked about the leaky nature of the Broncos defense a little bit earlier in the week. I suggest you go back and watch that video if you have not watched it already, really examining 7 of the last 8 games for the Denver Broncos defensively and how maybe the perception versus performance isn't really adding up. But let's dive into these dynamics. But before we do that, real quick, thank you guys for being here. Smash that subscribe button if you have not. After you've watched the video, share your thoughts in the comments. I would love to interact with you there, and set an alert so you never miss a video. And tell a friend about this podcast. We are growing every single day. I say podcast, YouTube channel. Would love for you to spread that word in a really organic way. Okay. Dynamic number 1 that I'll be focusing on this weekend, week 3, Broncos, Chargers, it's the inside linebackers. Guys, Justin Herbert could have a field day against the second level of the Denver Broncos defense. Let's just be real, guys. They were hard to watch in week number 2. Alex Singleton and Justin Sternad were hard to watch. According to Pro Football Focus, those 2 players, Singleton and Sternad, were targeted a total of 6 times by Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts. And according to Pro Football Focus, in those 6 times, you know what it resulted in? 6 for 6. 6 for 6 for 126 yards. It's hard to pick on a positional group in a more bullied fashion than the Colts did to those 2 players a week ago. And Daniel Jones is significantly improved, and Shane Steichen is doing a fantastic job in Indianapolis. But with all due respect, that combination and that offense is not at the level of the Los Angeles Chargers. So I know it's just 1 week, but I think it's a hyper-relevant dynamic to be watching on Sunday afternoon in the first divisional matchup for the Broncos this year. Because if that dynamic remains the same, or even a second cousin of the dynamic we saw against Indianapolis, it could be a very, very long day for the Broncos. But I think there's an element that even comes before that, and that is stopping the run. Guys, in my humble opinion, football starts and ends in the trenches, okay? And when you look at the Broncos' run defense, it has been just not good enough here recently, okay? And when we talked about the Broncos in the preseason and you're looking ahead at the strength of this team, you would say it would be the defense over even the improved offense. But within the defense, someone like myself would say, I think the single biggest strength under the umbrella of Vance Joseph's defense would be the front 7. Well, I just watched that group get pushed around in Indianapolis by the offensive line from the Colts, which is one of the better offensive lines in the league. But it wasn't just about Sunday. If you zoom out, okay, and look at the Broncos' run defense, all right, in 5 of the last 6 games that this Broncos defense has been on the field for. All right. And we are going to go back to last year. And typically I wouldn't be referencing previous years' results, but when you have the highest retention rate of anyone in the NFL, and we're talking about largely the same players, right? In a preview video, I remember in the preseason, it was 13 of the 14 most played snaps a year ago were returning, right? So I think it's fair to at least reference it, not let it be like the gospel, but reference the sample size here with the same collection of players. So we're going to take out the Kansas City game, Week 18, right? The 38-0 win against backups, not reflective of NFL football. So if we take that out, okay, and look at 5 of the last 6 games with the Broncos run defense, check this out. Week number 1 this season, Tennessee, 71 yards given up on the ground, 3.4 yards a carry, okay? That will be the outlier here, as you're about to discover. All right, so but a really good a rush defense in week number 1 against the Titans. Week number 2 against Indianapolis, this past week, 167 yards on the ground, 5.2 yards per carry. Not great, Bob. Not great. Go back to the Buffalo game last year in the playoffs. The Bills ran for 213 yards on the Broncos' run defense, a 5.2 yards per carry. All right. You go back to the Cincinnati game. All right. Week 17 last season. Remember, we're throwing out week 18. Week 17, 118 yards on the ground given up by the Broncos defense, 4.3 yards per carry on average. The Chargers, these same Chargers, a little bit different personnel, but these same Chargers that the Broncos will play this weekend, Week 16 a year ago, they ran for 134 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. And then lastly, Indianapolis, Week 15 last year, they ran for 149 yards on 4.6 yards per carry. So in 5 of the last 6 games, the Broncos have given up a minimum of 115 yards on the ground. Now, if you look at the Chargers through 2 games, they are not having a lot of success running the ball. Justin Herbert's having a field day throwing it. But we know Jim Harbaugh, and we know his philosophy, all right? And I have a real hunch that on Sunday afternoon, they are going to have a concerted effort and a extreme emphasis to get their ground game going against the Broncos defense that has shown us recently that they have not been able to stop the run. And guys, football becomes extremely hard, if not impossible, if you are not able to stop the run. It is one of the core principles of the game of football. All right, so the Broncos have got to get better in that regard, and I believe a real test of that run defense is coming on Sunday afternoon in Los Angeles. And finally, the coaching dynamic. Let's get to it. Jim Harbaugh, in head-to-head matchups, has owned Sean Payton. I think that is closer to fact than opinion. These 2 coaches have went head-to-head 6 times in their NFL career. And Jim Harbaugh is 5-1 in those games. And if you remember the most recent loss to Jim Harbaugh a year ago, late down the stretch of last season, Jim Harbaugh flat out outcoached Sean Payton to a clinic degree. Sean Payton had multiple mistakes at the end of the first half, trying to run out the clock and throw it out of bounds, but he doesn't kill enough time. They ran it at the end of the first half. Harbaugh calls a timeout. They get the ball back from a punt. You remember the special teams gaffe that led to the first free kick in 57 years in the NFL, hung points on the board for the Chargers at the end of that half? And then near the end of the game in the fourth quarter, not once but twice, Sean Payton punting from midfield, once from the 50, once from the 49, in a 4th and 3 scenario for both instances where every analytic known to man says that is a weak punt. Every analytic or even football instinct says go for it. All right, being down 3 in a short yardage scenario at midfield to not go for it. So there was several instances in just that singular most recent game against the Chargers. It's got to get better. All right, Sean Payton has took the brunt of this matchup far too often. It's got to get better. All right, and those dynamics, keep an eye on them. Inside linebacker play and run defense, I think, are going to be of paramount importance, right at the top of the list of fundamental things to watch on Sunday. We'll be back a little bit later in the week talking about the flip side of the football in this matchup. Guys, appreciate you being here. Again, I'm going to say it again, subscribe to this channel, drop me your thoughts in the comments, set an alert, and again, the most grassroots, organic way that we can grow this podcast that you guys are at the nucleus of, all right? Being of the first 1,000 subscribers, the first 700 subscribers, we've blown through 600 here in 16 days here. But it's just to tell someone organically. Guys, again, thanks for being here. You'll hear more from me tomorrow.